First at 4, some new details in a deadly shooting that was breaking news at 4 o'clock yesterday. Thanks for joining us. I'm Kim Kalunian.
And I'm Kayla Fish. Providence police say they have someone in custody tonight. This was the scene on Prudence Avenue Monday. Right now, the shooter isn't facing murder charges because he says he only fired his weapon in self-defense when his landlord brought people with weapons to his door and kicked it down.
The landlord has now been identified as the victim, Jenny Jensen. 12 News reporter Sheena Losciuto is live in Providence with more on what police are calling just a terrible situation. Sheena.
Well, the man involved in this case is named Rufus Watson. Watson is facing several weapons charges right now and is behind bars facing $100,000 in bail money. But will he face any charges related to that fatal shooting? Well, police say that will be up to a grand jury. A dispute about a living situation and people with weapons on both sides of the door. That's what police say eventually turns into a deadly shooting inside of a Prudence Avenue home. Police were called there around 2 o'clock Monday.
Upon arrival, we found a female lying in the hallway in front of the third floor apartment.
Yes. Come on, closure. Yes, edges. What? Where?
What's up, it's the kid 2C with LIB backbone. Shout out to my man DJ Festa.
35-year-old Jenny Jensen has been identified as the victim. She lived on the second floor and was the landlord. Police say the other person involved is 36-year-old Rufus Watson.
From what we're getting, Mr. Watson is staying in the third floor apartment, which was rented by his cousin.
That cousin apparently was no longer there, and Providence police say there were some talks between Watson and Jensen.
Keep your eyes on me, apply that. Get it, don't be timid when you in it, apply that. Love upon it.
She had went up the stairs to the third floor apartment with her brother and another person and knocked on the door in order to evict him. It eventually led to them kicking in the door.
Police say Watson was waiting on the other side with an AR-15 in his hands, and the people entering had weapons too.
As Mr. Watson would describe it as a self-defense.
As for what's next, Providence Police Major David LePayton says they will continue the investigation and it will likely be brought before a grand jury.
Okay.
Meanwhile, Watson faces several weapons charges, including having a ghost gun and a magazine that can hold more than 10 rounds.
What's done is done, and we can't change that. But we have to investigate it and get to the absolute truth and the facts of what happened.
Big titties, little waist body, crazy curvy, wavy, big titties, little waist body, yaddy, yaddy, yaddy.
And again, Providence police consider this a very active investigation, working with the Attorney General's office right now to see if any charges will come out of that fatal shooting.
And Sheena, we've obviously learned that Jensen and Watson were not alone. So was anyone else hurt?
So the two other people that were with the landlord, police say that they left the scene after the shooting, so nobody else was hurt here, and we're told Watson is the only person that fired a weapon.
Nobody 'cause I can't find my way. Nobody move, nobody move.
Oh God. Hey, what's going on, guys? You have to bear with me because it has been a very long and difficult and frustrating day. I'm just winding down, getting back into the office and trying to simmer down. A lot of shit went down today. But hopefully by the time you hear this commentary and this video is released, I'll be doing better. Anyway, make sure you like, share, and subscribe this video and channel. And again, huge shout out to those of you who are Patreon members and continue to support the Brian Too Bad TV Solange platform. You can find all of my links to my other social media and mobile pay apps down in the description box, and hopefully, if I remember to put it there, the pinned post. So initially, when I came across this story on my own, checking out gunmemorial.com/women, where I pick up a lot of these stories. Initially, the plan was to make this a community post because, simply put, as I've been telling you guys for the longest, my time is very constrained between, what I do for money offline and so much other crazy shit that's happening in my personal life on a daily. But upon getting more details, and as I dug a little deeper into this incident, I realized very quickly that this was definitely a story that I was going to be interested in doing a video commentary on. Now, as a side note, off topic, you may hear me cough frequently in this video. I'm trying to hold it back because I'm dealing with a lot of acid reflux right now. I took some Tums earlier. That's holding back a lot of the acid, but there's still certain things that physiologically happens to me almost whenever I eat. So it is what it is. It's like I'm a fucking smoker or something, but nonetheless. So this is a very odd story, but it is also a story that mirrors the modern day black queen and thug thought that we have discussed and many of us have experienced and observed and watched slowly but surely devolve over the years, decades, and last couple of generations. It's awkward in the sense that you don't often see a black female, and particularly one of these aging, what I call traveling hood rats, hood whores, in positions of authority over black men, acting out the way this bimbo in Rhode Island acted out, which of course, as you probably were able to pick up from the intro, ultimately led to her demise. Yet at the same time, even though it is somewhat unusual, and to be honest with you, considering many of the facts of the case that we know so far, at least from the time that I've been making this video, I started making this video, this commentary, this is not only a unusual case with the black bitch, but this is also gonna be a unusual case that is likely going to be a example of legal precedent with very, very extenuating circumstances that is probably, is probably going to be at least quietly discussed amongst so-called legal experts and scholars for years and years and years. Although it would not be the first such case, but it is certainly a case that you don't hear of very often. And if indeed it is determined that there are extenuating circumstances that would serve to lessen the potential consequences and punishment of the individual that was accused of pulling the trigger, then that would, especially considering that it was a black male who was a armed felon illegally carrying a weapon, that would definitely be the talk of the town amongst guns rights advocates that would sit on both sides. I would imagine would sit on both sides of the spectrum when it comes to an issue like this. Now keep in mind, when I say that this is not the first time that such a thing has occurred, what I mean by that is there was a case also on the East Coast many moons ago. There was a white man. I don't recall his name. Some of you will know his name, right from the rip from, the description of the story. And feel free to put that information, if you will, down in the description box. I could have looked it up, but, I just felt like it wasn't important, to drop the specific name to, give this example of the point that I'm trying to make. But there was a white man back in the 80s, and keep in mind this took place before the Central Park 5 or whatever, a few years before it. I believe it was in 1985 or 1986. There's this little goofy looking four-eyed white dude that was traveling to work. I believe he was an electrician or something like that on the New York subway system, when 5 black thugs, some little stupid ass niggas, baby spawns, they accosted him and they threatened to assault and rob him. And longer story short, he pulled out, I believe it was a Saturday night special, what they described as a Saturday night special, a short barreled 5 or 6 shot revolver, and shot all 5 of these idiots, including one in the back as he tried to run, and another one when he was already down from being injured either by the gunshot or tripping and falling or something. Now, this guy was obviously charged, and he went to trial, and he admitted to shooting these young fools. And the jury actually acquitted him of attempted murder and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, but he was convicted of the charges of carrying an illegal handgun in the city of New York, which, as you may know, has been banned. Concealed carry, I believe even still now, is very banned in New York City proper. I don't know what the laws are in New York State, but New York City has had some of the fiercest anti-gun laws on the books for decades, which is pretty funny because at one point in time, around the time when John Lennon was shot and killed, it was actually the gun homicide murder capital of the United States, but that's a subject for another video. So, he claimed self-defense, but he also admitted to detectives that he was PO'd, that these little niggas was fucking with him. And, crime was just run amok especially in the major cities. You know, from what I understand, I've spoken with some people that lived in New York City back in the 80s and the 70s. They said it was just basically understood. There's a couple of things you did if you were riding public transportation. One was you carried with you something called mugger's money. And mugger's money was in case somebody come up and tried to rob you, you had some cash to give them, so it would lessen the chances of them beating you or pistol whipping you or shooting you or stabbing you. And the other thing was that you stopped riding the train, you stopped taking the bus when the sun set, unless you absolutely had no other choice. And we've heard, you know, even in recent times, absolute horror stories just in New York alone, which actually has improved on violent crime. And they still have fucked up situations like fucking homeless transient motherfuckers, and especially bitches, pushing people on the train tracks. And I remember there was this Puerto Rican chick that was trying to go about 3 a.m. over to her boyfriend's house, probably for a booty call, and she wound up getting dragged back down into the subway and raped right in front of a New York Transit Authority staff member at a ticket booth. And it's just, New York's subway system is not a place that you want to find yourself, especially at night. But nonetheless, so this white guy, he won the case of sympathy from the jury, okay, and they let him off for shooting these boys, including the one that he shot in the back, which clearly was not self-defense, and the one that he walked up and shot when he was already on the ground. All 5 of those counts of attempted murder and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon were dropped. Now, the reason why I bring that up is because when I observe this current situation, okay, first of all, let's look at the details and then let's look at the facts. On January the 31st of this year, Providence police responded to a call in the middle of the day, mid-afternoon at approximately 2:30 p.m. to a 3-story bungalow property located on Prudence Avenue. Upon arrival, they cleared the outside of the building and they entered in on the first floor. On the first floor, they found a 35-year-old female identified as Jenny Jensen, laying motionless and in a pool of blood in the hallway. She was transported by ambulance to a nearby hospital where she was very quickly pronounced dead. Now, throughout the course of the police investigation, they determined that Jenny Jensen was not only a tenant of the building, but she was the landlord of the building. She actually owned the building, and she had been renting it out to this individual who had another man who was his cousin staying with him, named Rufus Watson, aged 36. Now, Rufus Watson is, from my understanding, a convicted felon out of South Carolina. So he could be classified as a Pookie. I don't know what his felony record consists of. I didn't go that far in my research yet, but anyone else, feel free to dig up more information on him. But Rufus Watson was staying there with his cousin. I don't know if he was subletting to this individual, the unnamed tenant that actually had a lease contract with Jenny Jensen, or if this was just a case of, a family member allowing another family member to stay with them. But apparently there was some type of dispute, not sure if it was a dispute about rent payment or if it was just some type of domestic dispute or what the fuck was going on. Although I do have my suspicions, but we'll get to that a little later. But longer story short, Jenny Jensen, she took it upon herself to request help from her brother and another man only identified as a friend to come over to the property, and together they went up to the apartment where Mr. Rufus Watson was holed up in his cousin's apartment, and they proceeded to kick down the door of that apartment. Now, according to Jenny's brother and friend who were interviewed by police, she was trying to evict Rufus Watson from the property. I don't know if this is a case of, her finding out that he was living there without her permission, or if he was, doing something, like drugs or drug dealing, or, creating a racket or whatever that, she didn't allow on her property. But nonetheless, she felt like, she should take it upon herself to have him removed from the property. I don't know if he refused to leave, and that's what led to her, trying to get her brother and the other dude or whatever what the fuck happened. But we do know the fact is she went to the apartment with her brother and a male friend, and they eventually broke down the door. The police and the news report described it as they kicked in the door. So this was a very, very dramatic situation. Now, it was also confirmed by the Providence police that when they kicked in the door, they didn't just have themselves. One or more of these motherfuckers were armed. Okay? Now, I saw one report that confirmed that Jenny Jensen was one of the people that was armed. It did not say for sure if all three of them were armed or if the two males that were with her were armed. But here's the situation. Rufus Watson described to the police after they arrested him and took him, downtown for an interview. He described a situation where he was backed into a room beside the kitchen, and he was in fear for his life when he heard these people breaking down the door, and there was no indication that he knew or not that it was the landlord. He may not have known. Okay, but when they kicked in the door and came barging through, unbeknownst to them, he was armed with an AR-15 assault rifle. Now, this AR-15 assault rifle was recently banned in the state of Rhode Island. The rifle that he had a barrel over 16 inches, which is illegal in the state of Rhode Island. It had a magazine capacity of more than 10 rounds, which is also illegal under their new law in the state of Rhode Island. And obviously he was a felon in possession of any gun or any weapon, even if it had been a dinner knife, which is banned in most states. Okay, although it's not a federal law to my knowledge. Okay. Oh, and from what I understand, it was a ghost gun, which is also illegal in Rhode Island and rapidly becoming illegal in many states, including my state. So when Jenny Jensen, Miss Wakanda Warrior Princess, when she comes barging through, he guns her down. Neighbors in the surrounding area, they describe, and one tenant who was also so happened to be moving out of her apartment that day in the same building, she described, or the witnesses described, hearing 3 to 4 gunshots in rapid succession, and then seeing the two males run out of the house, assumably her brother and her so-called male friend. But Jenny Jensen did not come out of the house because she got lit the fuck up. I could not get any indication on where she was shot, but I can tell you right now from experience and knowing what I know about intermediate rounds fired from rifles, that anywhere in the torso or head being hit with a high velocity rifle round is almost certain every time to be fatal. If you guys recall the Beltway snipers, them two crazy niggas that was going around shooting people in the back, in the head at gas stations. Almost everybody they shot, no matter where they shot them in the body, died. Okay, being hit with a rifle bullet is a lot more devastating than getting hit with a handgun. So this bitch, she got her shit blown away. Weave and all. I mean, I'm not even trying to be funny. Okay, getting hit with a rifle is a very dramatic experience. It's no fucking joke. So she was dead. You know, they probably just took her to the hospital as procedure. She was probably dead as soon as she hit the ground. I don't know where. Again, I don't know where she was hit. Maybe she was hit in a less vital area and just bled out. I don't know. But the fact is, she was shot and killed by Mr. Rufus Watson. Now, Mr. Rufus Watson, because he had a ghost gun, because he had a rifle with a barrel that was too long, because he had a rifle with more than 10 rounds, and he was a convicted felon in possession of a weapon, he's in a lot of trouble for, you know, illegal possession of a weapon. He has 5 felony counts against him for that. Okay, that is justified. And turns out he's actually the first person in the state of Rhode Island to be charged in connection with these new laws that just went into effect at the end or towards the end of last year, from what I understand. But here's the thing. Interestingly enough, because this is something that we have not seen too often when it comes to the black male, especially these Pookie savages, Rufus Watson has yet to be charged with the murder or manslaughter of Jenny Jensen. The reason being is because in the course of the police investigation, they know that Jenny and or one of the 2 males who entered the apartment in an illegal manner, by the way, and I'll explain that in a minute, was armed themselves. Okay? Now, just from this little tidbit here, okay, I'm going to give you my take on this whole situation. I could be right. I could be wrong. Okay? I never once claimed to be 100% on everything that I say and my opinions and my perspectives on things. Okay? But I'm just going to give you guys my take on this. Okay? Number one, I believe that Jenny Jensen was the one that was likely armed, which is why when the boy opened up, because it's not hard at household distances, it is not hard to hit anything with a rifle. Okay? A child, I remember there were some white boys, were they like 11 and 13 years old back in the late 90s? They ambushed their middle school in Jonesboro, Arkansas or something, and they shot like 15 people and killed 4 little girls and a pregnant teacher. 11 and 13 fucking years old, and they had 30-06 rifles. It is not hard to hit something with a rifle. So the point that I'm making is, if all 3 of the people who barged in that apartment were armed, and he has an AR-15, assumably with a 30-round magazine, because I haven't heard of any AR-15s coming with 20-round magazines. They usually come in 30 or 60 from what I know. If all 3 of them were armed, likely with handguns, why didn't he just gun all 3 of them down? Okay, they wouldn't have known what hit him. Okay, there might have been a shootout where they got him, but why did he shoot all 3 of them? Why were the other 2 dudes running out if they had guns and they just saw their sister or, you know, their girlfriend or their friend or fuck buddy or whatever just, you know, shot to pieces? Why didn't they return fire on the dude? This means one or 2 things, in my perspective. Either A, her brother and her so-called male friend were cowards that didn't want that smoke. They didn't want to start what they finished with that man in that apartment. Or B, they weren't the ones that were armed. They were just the muscle. She was the gunman or the gun woman. Okay? Now, the reason why I say the reason why I have this perspective is because she was the only one that wound up shot. Plus, the brother, the unnamed brother, he gave an interview to news reporters where he said he described seeing his sister getting shot right in front of him. Okay, if this man was armed, okay, you see your sister or anybody, whether she's in the wrong or the right, you see your loved one get murked right in front of you. Aren't you going to try to return fire and get the person to just shot your sister, or try to, if not get the lick back, if not, for vengeful purposes, to try to, lay down some cover fire to pull her, to cover and safety? So the fact that him and the other dude ran out the house, that makes me believe, and I don't know if this was Jenny Jensen's personal firearm. I told you niggas, I warned y'all time and time again, a lot of these bitches are arming themselves. Some of y'all think I'm playing, okay? You talking about, why did Brian Solange always call corporate? Why he always calling the police? All right, dumb motherfucker, you run into the wrong hood rat. You gonna find out. But anyway, so I don't know if this was her weapon or not, or it was a weapon that was handed to her by, one of the two adult males that she was with. Okay. But what I hypothesize is neither one of these other dudes were armed. Kind of like the case not far from there. And where was that? Baltimore back in 2016, where you had the crazy ass light-skinned bitch, what was her dumbass name? Corinne Gaines, that called herself trying to hold off a SWAT team with a pump action shotgun and her 5-year-old kid. And her boyfriend, her booty buddy, he just got the hell out of there. He grabbed his daughter and he just got the hell out of there. Got the hell out of Dodge. The only thing worse, I might imagine, though thankfully I've never encountered it, even though I'm ready for it if I do. The only thing worse than a crazy ass black bitch from my, from everything that I'm seeing, is a crazy black bitch with a gun. But nonetheless, okay. So I believe that she was the one with the gun. Okay, the other two dudes were unarmed. The other thing that I believe is that this was more than just a landlord-tenant dispute. Okay, now the reason why I say that is several reasons. Number one, first of all, a quick check of Jenny Jensen's social media confirms what I pretty much suspected in the beginning, was that she was one of these, like I said, traveling hood whores, Cancun, Mexico, fucking Jamaica, Great Britain, Canada, sipping on champagne, in Marseille, France, doing the hula dance in fucking Hawaii. She was one of these traveling hood whores that, love to put their adventures on social media. But upon, observing that she was a traveling hood whore, I could see from the tats to the music she was playing in the background to the dances she was doing, she's a hood rat. Okay, she's an aging hood rat. There's no indication, although there's no indication that she had any children. I haven't heard anything about her being a mother. Okay, it looked like she was a very business-minded person. She ran, like so many of these bitches nowadays, she ran her own online hair salon and beauty boutique, and she was a property owner. But the bitch is an aging hood rat. She's probably a few years from that wall, but from her physique, she hadn't quite got there yet. Okay, so the reason why I bring up that she's a hood rat or a weave rat or a thug thought, well, she was a thought bot until she turned into a thug thought, is because you have to understand, and many of you already know this, that with black women who are, who are thought bots, who have that, weave ratchet mentality, there comes a certain type of personality flaw that leads to certain behavior patterns, okay, which makes them all essentially clone-like. We've discussed this on several different occasions, okay? If you are a legit landlord and a property owner, okay, and you have an issue with a tenant, okay, one person, though they may have been lying, they said that he was a squatter that was abusing drugs. If you have these type of issues with a tenant, the thing that you're supposed to do, the proper legal way to doing this. And trust me, I have some experience in this, so I do know what I'm talking about. Is you either call the police or you file a lawsuit known as an eviction. Now, granted, it's, especially during the COVID scamdemic, we have seen that the eviction process can be extremely complicated, even before the scamdemic. Okay, landlords can get screwed out of a lot of money if tenants decide not to pay and they go to court and ask for more time, or the landlord was dumb enough to accept a partial payment. Then the judge, especially if the person comes in there, telling some sob story, talking about they got nowhere to go, and they show proof that they have, tried to make partial payments and the landlord accepted it. I've heard horror stories of landlords where they could have a person, hold up on their property, not paying them for up to 6 months. There have been cases where landlords have had to wait up to 6 months to evict somebody. After the COVID scamdemic hit, it was even worse. Some landlords are just now getting around since early 2020 to, throwing people out of fucking places. You know what I'm saying? Where, they haven't been paid in 2 years. Okay. So that's definitely something that you have to keep in mind if you want to become a property owner. But okay, so if it's a like some type of dispute like that, okay, this woman being 35 years old, she's a grown ass woman, hood rat or not, okay, she's a property owner and a landlord. She should know the proper channels through which to get this person evicted. Now, if it is a person whose name is not on the lease, okay, she doesn't even have to wait for the eviction process. You understand that? In most states, she does not even have to wait for the eviction process. Okay. There are extenuating circumstances in that situation too, as well, of course, but in most cases, especially you talking about a black male who has a criminal record, okay, whose name isn't on the lease, all she has to do is call the police and show proof. Okay. She doesn't even have to wait on the sheriff. Show proof that this person that's living here is not supposed to be living here. Okay. Plus they're, in violation of, my rules and regulations for my property, and possibly there are signs that they may have been conducting, they may have been engaging in illegal activity while on the property, living here. If that person's name ain't on the lease, they're out of there. I mean, that's the same, a landlord telling a person whose name is not on the lease to get the fuck off out of their building is equivalent to somebody, that you're living with telling you to get the fuck out of their house. Okay. You got to leave that day. There is no eviction process. Eviction processes are only for tenants who have legal binding contracts with the property owner. Why is this important? Because Jenny Jensen, for whatever reason, and I have a couple of suspicions as to what those reasons were, she felt that she didn't have to go through the proper channels to get this person evicted or kicked out of the building. She's going to be the big bad wolf and huff and puff and blow his house down. She goes in there with a gun. Something more. I mean, come on. Even Stevie Wonder can see that something else was going on here than just a landlord trying to evict a fucking tenant. Okay? What landlord? You get so pissed that you're gonna, first of all, even if they had have gotten him out of there, or if they had a shot or otherwise hurt him, like jumped him or something, Jenny and them two niggas she was with would have been the ones going to jail. Right? Because they are illegally entering a premises. You can't do that. That's one thing you cannot do as a landlord in most states. You cannot enter a tenant's dwelling without giving them, so many hours or so many days notice. Okay? Or without a legal court order to do so. Okay? So yes, there have actually, believe it or not, there have actually been landlords, and I mean white landlords, that have been arrested and charged with burglary. Yes. And trespassing. Yes. There have been quite a few cases of that. Look it up on Google. You can't just barge into somebody's shit just because it's your property. Because it's understood that that individual, that is their personal dwelling. Okay? Even if they're not paying you rent, you have to go through the proper channels. So then, the question comes back, other than her just being a stupid ass black bitch that thinks that the world of law and rules don't apply to her. Why did Miss Jenny Jensen, 35-year-old somewhat successful businesswoman, just making enough money to go on all these trips all around the world, why did she take it upon herself to summon her brother and a male friend and have them kick this dude's door down, and then she goes charging in there like Colonel Custer with a fucking gun and get her goddamn shit blown away, her guts or her brains blown out? Why did she do that? And I'm noticing, just as a side note, I'm noticing a lot since that bitch at that sports bar and grill in Anniston, Alabama. I'm noticing a lot of black females losing gunfights too, to other hood rats and to niggas and even to white men. Like, y'all, I know a lot more of y'all are arming yourself, but you better go get target practice, or you better learn to cool it, cause I done told y'all that's why I am the way I am. Why I just stay to myself, cause I know once that gun come out, okay, even if you tell somebody that you have a gun without even brandishing it, okay, the shit gonna hit the fan, whether it's with the police, whether it's with the person you talking to pulling they shit out, whether it's whatever, okay? Once that gun gets introduced, it's on, okay? So, you gotta understand, bro. Like, I know she probably thought she was the only one with a gun and got surprised real quick. Bitch probably didn't even know what hit her. But, back to this question. Why did this goofy ass bitch take it upon herself to illegally enter this unit in such dramatic fashion, armed with a gun? Her and possibly, the two other people in her party armed with a firearm to confront this, assumably only the Rufus Watson guy and not his cousin. There was no indications that his cousin was even home. Okay. Again, I don't know. This may have been a case where the cousin was illegally subletting. I know that happens a lot on college campuses where students that are, away, they'll sublet their shit to somebody else that stays there to help pay the rent without telling the landlord. Okay. But whatever the situation, why did she do it this way? Again, other than her just being a silly ass, black hoe that thinks, she's some type of law unto herself that can do whatever the fuck she wants, which I'm sure factored into that. Well, I have a couple of theories. My two main theories are that one, there had been some type of disagreement between her and the cousin or possibly Rufus Watson that had been brewing for days, weeks, possibly even months. She went to confront him about it, and he talked to her some type of way where she felt disrespected. She felt like her queenhood was being disrespected, like he was trying to decrown her. So she did what black bitches who feel like, they need to put a Negro that they see as beneath them in their fucking place, like the white segregationist crackers did down in the South back in the good old days. She feels like since this nigga, he's a, convicted felon, and he's living here either for free or without my permission, or, on somebody else's lease, whatever. Okay. She figures this nigga is beneath her, even though they're about the same age. And from what I see, essentially have similar mentalities. She figured, well, I'm gonna show this nigga. He think he can talk to me like that, or he think he can treat me like that. There may have even been a physical confrontation where she lost the physical confrontation, because a lot of these black bitches now, they get in a nigga's face, think they can fight niggas, or dare a nigga to hit him, so they could get him caught up on charges. So she figures, okay, I'm gonna go get my gun, or I'm gonna call my brother and my male friend, likely AKA fuck buddy, and have them, bring a gun up here. We gonna barge in here and we gonna show this nigga what time it is. Like some gangsters. We gonna do a gangster shit, fucking death row, right? And when it's done, then I'm gonna have him hide the gun for me. And since he's a convicted felon, cops ain't gonna believe nothing he say, right? We gonna play the victim after we get done dealing with this nigga, right? It was either that, and something is making me really hope that it's that and not the former. Is that it's the latter and not the former. Because the other possibility that I'm thinking is this bitch was not only living in that building, and somebody, when I say this, can I get an amen? She was not only living in that building, but she was likely fucking one or several of the tenants in that building. Yeah. It would not surprise me, knowing how dysfunctional these crusty, dusty ass fucking apes are. Okay, both male and female. It would not surprise me if Jenny Jensen was hopping up and down every other night on the dick of Watson's cousin or Watson himself in exchange for rent pay. It would, or reduced rent. It would not surprise me in the least. If there was some type, if I'm assuming this will come out in the police investigation, but it would not surprise me. Single black bitch in her mid-30s, few years from hitting the wall. She's a property owner, which means she has some level of power and authority over certain people. It would not surprise me at all. I actually had, back a long time ago, when I worked in the retail business, many moons ago, back in my 20s, there was a black vendor that would come into the store where I worked. And, we would, talk a lot. And I worked third shift. And it got around to, I eventually realized, he was a pussy man. He said he had several jobs because he had a high cost of living. What he meant by a high cost of living was he solicited a lot of hoes. Not, like prostitution. Like he just, got hoes from the college campus or, wherever, brought him over and, just paid him to do whatever he wanted them to do. And this was something that was common. He was always bragging, calling stuff, showing me pictures. I'm like, man, I don't want to see that shit. He even invited me to come over his house one time. Well, it got around to him telling me that in addition to being a pussy man, he also had this black female landlord hoe that was like this 50-plus-year-old bitch that was, she was kind of fat. She was a church deacon at a church not too far down the street from where I lived. And he showed me a picture of her, half naked, in his room. She was his landlord. He told me that he was banging her ass at least once a month for reduced rent. Pulling them panties to the side on that fat ass. On that ass. And I couldn't like look at him like, man, you full of shit. Cause he was showing me the pictures of the bitch. Half naked. In his shit. In his room. In his house. He rented out a duplex that she apparently was the landlord of. So it would not surprise me. I'm not saying she did, but it would not surprise me if Jenny Jensen had some type of sexual innuendo with one or both of these niggas, and may have even been fucking other tenants for reduced or no rent. Wouldn't surprise me. Okay. And whenever you have especially ghetto people and sex, just like drinking and driving don't mix, right? They say money and love don't mix. Business agreements and booty calls don't mix. Okay? It wouldn't surprise me if there was some type of, disagreement about, the money sex venture, or them niggas just stopped dicking her down, or she found out, she went in there one time or saw them niggas bringing other females over, or, she just decided she didn't want to deal with them anymore, with that, sex for rent agreement. She just decided she didn't want to deal with them anymore. Could have been any of a number of things. This is what I do know. I absolutely 100% positively refuse to believe that this goofy ass bitch went over there, armed herself, kicked down the door, went barging in there like the fucking 7th Cavalry led by Colonel Custer, and wound up getting gunned down like Colonel Custer and his men. Made out to look stupid as hell, like a fucking fool, laying in her own pool of blood inside the hallway of one of the units in her own fucking property over a simple rent or eviction dispute. Because number one, what the articles keep saying is she was attempting to evict a tenant. This is untrue. You see how the liberal media always tries to cover for these hoes? She was not trying to evict a tenant. That is an absolute lie. Why? Because two things we know. Mr. Rufus Watson, number one, was not a tenant. Okay? He was not a legal tenant. He was staying there with the legal tenant, which was identified as his cousin, whose name is on the lease, assumably. Okay? Number two, her kicking down the door armed with a gun is not an eviction. That is burglary and forced entry. Even though it's her own property, you can't do that. Had she succeeded in whatever nefarious, devious shit she was planning to do to that man when she got in there, okay? Maybe they was gonna gang rape him. I don't know what the fuck. Man, these niggas are so fucked up, man. Ain't no telling what the fuck be going on. Shit, I don't know the criminal history of her brothers, man. They might have been telling niggas not to drop the soap in prison. I don't know what the fuck. But she was not evicting him, okay? She was trampling upon him and his cousin's rights. Their human rights, their constitutional rights, their residential rights, okay? Their legal rights, okay? That was not an eviction. And he was not a tenant. So I wish the fucking liberal ass media would stop lying and covering for this dumb asshole. Okay? She was killed trying to after forcing entry, burglarizing, and attempting to ransack and possibly assault or kill this man. And in spite of him being likely a Pookie savage degenerate, or at least a degenerate himself, and having an illegal weapon, he successfully defended himself, which is why, against all odds, him being a convicted felon with an illegal weapon and a ghost gun at that, okay, that violates every law under, Rhode Island jurisdiction, he has not been charged in her death. He has not been charged with murder or manslaughter. He's only been charged with crimes, felonies related to the firearm that he illegally had. Okay? So this is a very, very intriguing case. I want you guys to tell me what you think down in the comment section and description box. I'm gonna be following this case if it goes to trial, seeing what new developments may arise from the police investigation, because from my understanding, since they did not initially decide themselves, nor did the prosecutor over that district in Rhode Island decide to file murder charges, they're going to send it to a grand jury, and a grand jury will decide whether or not charges should be brought. But this is looking, usually, I will say this, from what I know, and I'm no legal expert, okay, but from what I know, usually when it comes to violent crime like and murder charges, Usually those are charges that are brought pretty quickly, pretty easily, pretty convincingly by the district attorney's office, because it is clear cut what happened and who was involved and who was responsible. Okay, so if this is something that if this investigation has to go to a grand jury to determine whether or not, you know, this man was justified in pulling the trigger to defend his own life, there is a very likely possibility that he may get off on that, and he may have a legit argument for self-defense. Remember, in self-defense, and this is almost universal, but not quite. I don't know if Rhode Island is a castle doctrine or a stand your ground doctrine state, but considering that it's one of those liberal shit hubs on the East Coast, is probably just a castle doctrine. Either way, either doctrine would, legitimize what he did in this case. But in the case of castle doctrine, okay, you are allowed to defend your home and defend yourself and defend your loved ones under any circumstances where someone attempts or successfully breaks in and intrudes into your home, whether they are visibly armed or not. Okay, so this bitch kicking down the door and coming in there with 3 people, which is mob action, which you are also allowed to defend against. 3 or more people is considered a mob. Whether they're armed or not, you can open fire on them if they're trying to attack you, and armed with a gun. She has a mob, a gun, and she illegally broke and entered. Okay, this guy couldn't think that anything good is going to come out of this. Let me ask you this, including the haters. Somebody do this to you and you have a gun, how many of y'all would have just stood by and seen what was going to happen next versus how many of y'all would have pulled the trigger too? So I think, I'm not going to call him a brother because he's, a degenerate. If he was a convicted felon, like I said, niggas are always doing dumb shit. But nonetheless, okay, I will say this. If this man legitimately was in fear for his life, and just the fact of what is being described right now, her kicking in the door and barging in there with 2 males and a gun, okay, I really think he has a legitimate case. And like I said, I think legal experts are going to talk about this case for quite some time, and gun rights advocates are going to talk about it as well. I think he, although being a convicted felon, he's going to get in a lot of trouble on gun charges. I think he has a legitimate argument for self-defense. What do you guys think? Thanks so much for listening. Marlboro for life, and talk to you later, guys.
Where did it go? Did I leave it?